A man in red gloves watched me sleep. I first noticed him through the window across the street, though I told myself it was just a trick of the streetlight. A dark silhouette, unnaturally still, hands glinting red in the dim glow. The night was quiet, almost sterile. The city hummed softly, but my heartbeat drowned out everything else. I rubbed my eyes, convinced it was a shadow cast wrong, but the shape lingered. Red gloves. They were impossible to miss, a flare against the darkness. My stomach twisted, and I pulled the curtain closed, forcing the blinds to clatter shut. I tried to sleep, but the sensation of being watched refused to release me. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint whistle of the pipes, felt amplified, a rhythmic accompaniment to unseen eyes. The next night, I returned to the window, curiosity masking fear. He was there again, hands folded, back straight, still as if waiting for something I didn't understand. I didn't move. I couldn't. The red gloves were impossibly vivid, like they were burning against the shadows. The city's dim orange light hit them just right, highlighting their unnatural perfection. I whispered to myself that it was impossible. A neighbor? A late-night jogger? But the figure didn't move like someone trying to pass unnoticed. It simply watched, days blurred into nights. The silhouette became a fixed point in my peripheral vision, a recurring pattern I couldn't shake. Red gloves, back straight, patient, unblinking. I began checking every corner of my apartment obsessively. Doors, windows, vents, nothing could explain it. Still, the feeling persisted, and every time I dared glance toward the window, the gloves were there. I left notes on the fridge for myself. Don't look, don't look. I tried to ignore it, but my mind replayed the image endlessly. Red gloves, still hands, a figure that knew when I watched. One evening, I caught a movement too deliberate to ignore. A finger tapped lightly on the window pane, rhythmically, as if testing the glass. I froze, unable to breathe, while the city continued its indifferent hum. The tapping stopped. The figure vanished, leaving only an empty street, the faint glow of streetlights reflecting against nothing. But the feeling stayed. I was not alone. I began sleeping with the lights on. Every shadow in the apartment became suspect. Every faint sound a creak. A whisper of air felt like him approaching, just out of sight. The figure didn't appear at predictable times. Morning, afternoon, night, it didn't matter. Red gloves could flash in the distance while I ran errands or cooked, a phantom tethered to my life. I bought a small camera, pointing toward the street. At first, the footage showed only an empty sidewalk, empty windows, ordinary city life. Then, late at night, the camera captured a glint of red moving past the frame. Not long after, the mailbox clicked. I froze mid-step, convinced I was imagining it, but the paper inside was folded in a perfect square. No handwriting, no stamp, just a blank sheet. I felt it in my apartment even then. The air thickened in corners. Floorboards groaned for no reason. A shadow stretched along the wall, vanishing before my eyes could catch it. I began leaving lights on every night, but the figure didn't need shadows to exist. It was patient, existing in the gaps of perception, in the unspoken spaces between things. I tried talking to neighbors, casually asking if anyone had noticed odd people. They laughed, mentioned nothing unusual. I realized then that the figure wasn't visible to anyone but me, or at least, only I could feel it. Sleep became impossible. I would lie awake, watching the ceiling, imagining the red gloves hovering outside my window, waiting. Every noise, every distant footstep made me flinch violently. I started leaving my curtains open during the day, thinking sunlight might deter him. It didn't. The windows across the street reflected him faintly, impossible but undeniable, a stain of red in the glass. One night, I caught movement at the corner of my room. A shadow stretched across the floorboards, elongated, wrong. I spun, flashlight in hand, but no one was there. Only silence. Only anticipation. I began writing my observations obsessively. Red gloves, still hands, patient figure. Every detail I could recall. Every shift in posture. Every twitch in the corners of my vision. I noticed small traces elsewhere. A footprint in dust that hadn't been there before. A faint reflection in the silverware. The sense of being observed had permeated every inch of my apartment. I told myself it was paranoia, a trick of light. But then came the smell, faint, metallic, mixed with something floral, drifting from the window. I gagged and ran to close it, but the air had already settled. The pattern intensified. Whenever I glanced toward the street, he appeared just long enough to vanish when I blinked. Red gloves, hands folded, waiting, watching, always watching. One night, I dared leave the apartment. The streets were quiet, too quiet. I felt it trailing me, pacing steps behind me that never landed, a phantom echo of movement. I tried to confront it once, standing at the edge of the street. "Who are you?" I whispered. The air didn't respond. The figure didn't move. Only red gloves glinting in the distant streetlight. Days passed. The presence had become a background hum to my life. I avoided windows. I didn't leave lights off. The red gloves existed somewhere beyond understanding, tethered to me. I moved once, hoping distance would sever the link. For a week, relief. But then, a silhouette flashed across my new window. The same red gloves. Distance didn't matter. I tried to rationalize again. Coincidence, paranoia, a trick of memory. But the gloves were too consistent, too perfect, too deliberately patient. Every night, I sense him. In reflections, in shadows, in corners, just outside the periphery of my eyes. I cannot unsee him. I cannot escape him. I began sleeping in shifts, half-conscious, lights on, doors locked. Even then, the feeling of patient observation never relented. He exists in the gaps of perception, the space between comfort and terror. The city continues, indifferent, unaware of him, but I am tethered. The red gloves are always there, silent, waiting, watching, calculating. I sometimes wonder if he will ever act, or if his purpose is simply to observe. Either way, I know I cannot rest. The moment I close my eyes, I can feel him there. Even now, in my new apartment, a glance at the window makes my chest tighten. Red gloves, still hands, waiting. Always waiting. Sleep is optional. Awareness is mandatory. He watches. And I know, somehow, that I will never escape the red gloves. The corridor smells like perfume and rot. It started the moment I moved in. A faint scent lingered in the hallway outside my apartment. Floral at first, sweet, almost comforting. But beneath it was something wrong, something decayed, sour, crawling under the skin. The first night, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was old paint or the building settling. Yet the smell seemed to pulse, thickening in corners, following me down the hall. I noticed it most near apartment 3C. The door was always closed, neat, almost sterile, but the scent bled through the keyhole and under the frame. Every time I passed it, the smell sharpened. Perfume and rot together, a contradiction that made my stomach twist. I felt eyes on me, though no one appeared. I asked the neighbor across the hall if they noticed anything. They smiled politely, said the building had old plumbing smells sometimes, and closed the door. But I knew it wasn't that simple. At night, the corridor stretched unnaturally. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as the scent deepened. I felt pulled toward 3C, though fear pinned me in place. I tried to avoid the hallway, but it always called. The smell was persistent, invasive, crawling into my apartment through the smallest crack or vent. One evening, I left my door ajar, hoping to test it. The scent thickened, and I thought I heard a faint whisper, a voice humming something I couldn't catch. The next day, the building felt colder. Shadows in the hallway seemed darker, longer, stretching toward me with an intent I could not define. I began taking notes, mapping the pattern of the smell. Every evening it intensified near 3C, then receded when I retreated to my apartment, only to return when I ventured into the corridor. I noticed small things: scratches near the doorframe, a faint smudge on the handle, fingerprints too high for a neighbor to reach. My imagination whispered impossible things. Sleep became difficult. I imagined hands brushing against my shoulder in the corridor, the scent rising to a near-toxic level, teasing my senses, almost tangible. I tried contacting the landlord. They brushed it off, saying tenants complained about smells, but none had moved in or out recently. No explanation fit. One night, I waited. Standing at the edge of the hallway, I let the scent envelop me. Floral, then decayed, like something rotting beneath a perfumed mask. I strained to see, but the darkness swallowed details. I thought I saw movement, a shadow shifting behind the door of 3C. Not quite human, not quite still. It recoiled whenever I looked directly, leaving only the smell and the eerie silence. I began walking the hallway with a flashlight. Dust motes floated in the beam, but nothing else moved. Yet I felt followed, watched from just beyond the edge of the light. I tried leaving notes at 3C. Is someone there? Days later, they disappeared. The scent returned stronger, as if annoyed. The hallway's length changed depending on time of day. Sometimes it stretched impossibly, corners bending in ways that made me question memory. The scent became addictive and repulsive. I couldn't leave the hallway for long. Even in my apartment, a faint trace lingered, seeping through vents, cracks, and my clothes. I began recording the corridor with my phone. Night footage was inconclusive. Only the faintest shimmer appeared near the door of 3C, something shifting with the light. One morning, I woke to find a note slipped under my door. Single line, do not ignore. No handwriting, no signature, only the metallic hint of decay beneath the paper. I tried reasoning. Maybe a prank, a previous tenant, a ventilation quirk. But the smell defied explanation, bending reality in subtle ways I could not ignore. I started avoiding the corridor entirely, taking stairs, detours, any route that bypassed the door. The scent, however, found me wherever I went. I caught a glimpse once, standing just beyond the threshold of 3C. A hand, pale and delicate, brushing the edge of the door. Red streaks in the nail? Or the light playing tricks? I couldn't be sure. I started noticing my reflection in hallway mirrors. The corridor looked longer, the walls oddly textured. Sometimes my reflection lagged, delayed by a heartbeat, as if the corridor itself remembered differently. Sleep shifted to nightmares. Floral rot, whispers behind doors, shadows bending toward me, pulling me into the hall. I would wake drenched, the smell still clinging to my sheets. I left my apartment for hours at a time, but the moment I returned, the hallway greeted me like an old predator, the perfume and rot thick in the air, pulling me close, daring me to confront it. One evening, I finally stood at 3C's door. I pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. Then a shiver of air, and the smell intensified, pressing against my face, whispering words I could almost understand. The building's other tenants noticed nothing. I realized the corridor was personal, tailored for me, aware of my presence, learning my habits, exploiting fear itself. I began mapping escape routes mentally. The corridor seemed aware. Each step I planned, each turn I considered, the scent shifted, anticipating me, guiding me back toward 3C. I tried confronting it directly. Who's there? My voice echoed oddly. No answer, but the air moved, a subtle press against my chest. The smell wrapped around me like a warning. The corridor became a living entity. Shadows shifted independently, the floral rot pulsing, almost breathing, filling the space with tension and anticipation, pressing me toward the door. I accepted it. The corridor owned me. The smell, the shadows, the imperceptible movements, they were a game I could not win. Resistance only made it stronger. Even now, years later, the memory lingers. Hallways feel too long, smells too sharp. I avoid closed doors. I never ignore a scent that shouldn't exist. The corridor is patient, always watching. Perfume and rot, shadow and whisper. A reminder that the building remembers, and it has not forgotten me. He keeps leaving cigarette burns in my mailbox. It started subtly. Just small holes in the letters, brown-ringed and precise. At first, I assumed it was a careless smoker or faulty mail handling. The next day, the holes reappeared, more deliberate, arranged in odd patterns across the envelopes. My name was always untouched, only the paper itself scorched. I examined the mailbox. Nothing seemed tampered with, no fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. Yet every day, the burnt marks returned as if someone had rehearsed every movement. I asked the neighbor across the hall if they had noticed anything. They shook their head, mentioning only the usual rust and wear of old mailboxes. I didn't believe them. The holes became letters, patterns I could almost read, but when I tried to decode them, they shifted, scrambled, teasing understanding without revealing meaning. I started sleeping lightly, waking at every sound of the mailbox lid clicking. Footsteps in the hall echoed longer, heavier than normal. My nerves were frayed, taut. One night, I opened the mailbox with gloves on. The letters lay in neat stacks, their scorch marks forming concentric rings, smoke faint in the air. I felt eyes on me, though no one appeared. The pattern continued for weeks. My apartment felt smaller. Each envelope arrived with a faint metallic scent, a reminder that I was being observed, measured, tested. I installed a small camera, pointing directly at the mailbox. For days, it showed nothing unusual. Then, faint flicker shadows that paused too long, movements too deliberate, disappearing before the frame fully captured them. The next morning, I found a new letter. No scorch marks. Just a thin, long cigarette stub placed neatly across my nameplate. The smell lingered in the hallway, acrid and sweet at once. I tried to confront it, to catch the person in the act. Standing near the mailbox for hours, I waited. Nothing. Only the subtle shift of shadows and a sense of patient amusement. The smoke became a presence. A thin haze in the corridor at night, curling like fingers, brushing against the skin, reminding me that I was being watched even when no one was there. The letters became taunts. In one, the scorch marks traced my initials. In another, they formed shapes that made my chest tighten. A hand, a knife, a face I almost recognized. I began taking alternate routes to the mailbox, hoping to throw the observer off. It didn't matter. The letters always arrived, perfectly placed, perfectly burned, as if predicting my movements. I noticed subtle sounds at night. A match struck too softly to hear clearly. A drawer opening down the hall. Footsteps that didn't belong to anyone I knew. The pattern escalated. Envelopes arrived at strange hours. Sometimes before dawn, sometimes after midnight. I never saw the sender. Only evidence of their presence and the lingering acrid smell. I tried rationalizing it. Prank, coincidence, imagination. But the precision, the timing, the intelligence behind the burns, it defied reason. I installed locks, cameras, even motion sensors. The observer seemed uninterested. The letters and cigarette stubs arrived anyway, always perfectly positioned, always just out of reach. I began leaving notes for them. Why? Stop, I see you. They were ignored, or maybe acknowledged in ways I couldn't understand. The hallway seemed alive. Shadows stretched unnaturally. Reflections in windows moved differently. Even the smoke curling from the letters seemed deliberate, like a message written in air. I began waking in the middle of the night to the faint smell of burnt paper. It drifted through vents, under doors, brushing against my skin with uncanny awareness. One evening, I saw a reflection in the glass of the mailbox. A figure in the hallway. Red gloves, nothing else. The rest dissolved into shadows before I could focus. The letters began forming patterns across days. I tried documenting them, tracing connections, but each new envelope changed the sequence, refusing comprehension. Sleep vanished entirely. Every sound in the hallway became threatening. Every movement outside my door felt measured, deliberate, cruelly patient. I tried leaving the building, but the letters followed. I received them at my new apartment, even when my mailbox hadn't yet been assigned. I realized it was no longer a prank, no longer a game. It was a ritual, a performance with me as the unwilling audience, the hallway as the stage. I began to leave traps, smoke detectors, cameras, hoping to catch the observer in motion. Nothing worked. Only the letters continued to arrive. More precise, more deliberate, more unnerving. The scent of smoke became a presence in my life. It lingered in my clothes, in the corners of my apartment, in my dreams. It haunted me. I started dreaming of the figure, red gloves moving through shadowed corridors, placing letters, leaving burns in precise, cruel patterns. I would wake gasping, certain it was real. One day, I found an envelope in my own mailbox addressed to no one. Inside was a single cigarette, burned to ash at the tip, leaving the metallic scent lingering in the air. I stopped checking the mailbox. I tried to ignore it, to let the pattern fade, but the presence remained. The letters always came. The smoke always followed. The hallway waits. The red gloves watch. Every letter, every burn, a reminder that something is always aware of me. Even now, I pass the mailbox carefully. I breathe slowly. I check the letters and hope I'm not the next page in their ritual. Sleep is rare. Peace is rarer. The hallway waits. The smoke curls. The burns mark time. I will never open my mailbox without hesitation again. And I will never forget the precision of those red-gloved hands, leaving their cruel messages in quiet patience.